Hello, this is Deborah Clay, author of The Borrowed Boy and Just Be, and presenter of Castaway Books. Each week I invite one of my favourite authors to tell me about the books which have inspired their life and influenced their writing. This week's guest is Lynne McVernon. Hello, I'm really pleased to welcome Lynne McVernon, who is the author of Terrible with Raisins and Jigsaw Island. And it was Jigsaw Island that introduced me to Lynne. I really loved her book, particularly as it featured refugees. And I don't feel that there are enough stories about their plight and within an everyday kind of setting. It was a very satisfying read, which I highly recommend. So welcome, Lynne.
Thank you very much, Deborah. What an introduction. I hope I live up to it. Nice to be talking to you.
Absolutely, and to you. I'm so lucky in presenting Castaway Books. I do get to talk to some of my favourite authors. It's wonderful.
Wow, very flattering.
Shall we go straight in with your book number one?
Indeed. Right. Well, let me remind myself. It's called The Crown of Violet, and it's by Geoffrey Trees. And it's about a young boy, Alexis, who becomes fascinated with the theatre in ancient Greece. And he wants to enter a competition writing a play, but he's too young. So he enters under the name of his uncle, Uncle Paintpot, nickname, obviously, and has to attend rehearsals with him. As though Uncle Paintpot is actually the author, and it gets very embarrassing because it appears that Uncle Paintpot keeps laughing at his own jokes, which in fact Alexis wrote. And I must have been about 10 when I read it, and it was written in 1952, so the book was as old as I was. And I was fascinated with theatre anyway because my dad was a playwright and had several plays produced at the Cripplegate Theatre in London. It was on an amateur basis, but they were very well received. And that's what I wanted to do too. And so, you know, the combination of the playwriting by a young boy and ancient Greece, which I loved because I loved Greek mythology, that was a book that sort of encouraged me to write.
But what an inspiration and a role model to have a father who was a playwright. It doesn't matter if it was amateur or not. It was incredible.
No. It was. Dad and I had an awful lot in common. I'm just like a female version of him. So, anybody would recognize me as his daughter now.
I bet he'd be proud of you.
In part.
Have you got any siblings?
I have a brother. Nick, we both live in Devon now. We were brought up in South London and then moved to Berkshire. And Nick came down here to work. And because of family holidays, I always wanted to live by the sea. So we've ended up living about 12 miles apart from each other.
Lovely. Oh, that's great. Yeah. And you said Greek mythology. Were you reading Greek mythology when you were 10?
Yes. Oh. I was very precocious.
No, fascinating. I mean, they're wonderful stories. How did you come across that? Was it your father's influence?
I don't know. I went to a very, very good primary school in Morden. We had a wonderful head teacher called Mr. Barker, I will always remember his influence. And I'm sure it must have been through him. And he encouraged me to write as well.
Wonderful. Okay, so shall we go on to your second book?
Yes, Our Mutual Friend by Charles Dickens. I read this at school, secondary school, and although I'd read lots of other Dickens by that point, it just struck a chord with me. It's set on the Thames largely, and the Thames runs through the story, literally. And it's a sort of story, it's a kind of Jane Eyre meets her Mr. Rochester. So the two meet and fall in love, but there's a class difference. And it's only when Eugene, the lawyer, is beaten terribly by a rival of his, that he eventually realizes that Lizzie is the one for him. Looking at it now, I find that a bit suspect. It's my feminine hackles, my feminist hackles rise a little bit at that. But yeah, I thought it was a wonderful story, wonderful characters. And I ended up adapting it or dramatizing it for drama school at Guildford School of Acting.
That's amazing. How did you have that link with Guildford School of Acting?
Well, I trained as a theatre director. I won a bursary. I went to art school and wanting to do theatre design. And then I didn't get in on the course. And I was absolutely furious because they said I wasn't theatrical enough. And I thought, well, I'll show you. So I went into theatre as a stage manager and then was persuaded to apply to be a trainee director at regional theatres. And very happily, I was awarded a bursary in 1975. So not only was I working in theatre as a director, I was invited to direct at drama schools as well after a while. And our mutual friend is possibly my happiest experience of working at a drama school. And bless the principal, Professor Michael Gaunt, he allowed me to dramatise 3 Dickens there. So, and our mutual friend was the last one where I probably got it right.
What were the other 2?
Great Expectations and A Tale of Two Cities.
That's an incredible achievement, and what a wonderful story to have ended up, to go to art school and then ended up with this bursary and training as a theatre director. Could that even happen now? Do you think we had opportunities when we were younger? Because I'll tell you in a moment, I had a similar sort of ended up where I wanted to be in a very unusual route that couldn't happen today. Do you think it could happen today? Do you think we were more fortunate then?
No, we were very, very, very fortunate. And I think it makes young people a bit angry now with, the baby boomers had it so easy, and comparatively we did. But I mean, it's not actually our fault. We just happened to be born then. I don't know what we could do to make reparations. I sort of feel that there should be a tax weighting on people who've had been to university or elsewhere, rather than students have to pay it up front. If the government really truly thinks that it does give you an advantage in life, they would do it the fair way round and give graduates a tax weighting for life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Tell me about you.
Well, I was kind of like a fraud because I desperately wanted to be an occupational therapist when I was in my teens. And then I got a letter from the clearinghouse to say I was studying the wrong exams. So I left school without my A-levels. Then I got into OT college because they asked me to go for an interview. I told them how desperate I was to get in. They said, would you do your A-levels and come back next year? I said, yes. There was an admin error. They said to me, 2 weeks later, you're in because you've got them. And I didn't say anything. And I went, I completed the course, got my diploma, never got found out. And then just as you told me before the interview, you then went on because you didn't have a degree later to get your degree. I too only had a diploma as an OT and I didn't have my A-levels. So then I went on and did an MBA in strategic management, a master's, so that I caught up with my qualifications. But I spent 20 years working in the NHS and had a really successful career. But now, if that happened, you would have got thrown out. You couldn't have got away with it.
I don't know. Well, no, admin makes errors now, as we all know. No, I think it's largely the opportunities we had. I'm sorry, I don't know how old you are, so
I'm 61 actually. I keep saying I'm 60, but because I had a birthday during the lockdown, I don't count it.
Oh, I must try that one. I'm a little bit ahead of you, but yeah, I just had opportunities. My stepchildren have had to pay for their university education, and it just makes me so angry. They don't have to in Scotland, so if Scotland can manage it, why can't the rest of the rapidly disintegrating United Kingdom?
My daughter said to me, well, my daughter's 31 now, but she said to me when she was a teen, she was very angry with the baby boomer generation. She said, you could choose, you could pick and choose what you wanted to do, so don't tell me I could do this, I could do that, because the world's different for us. And how right was she? I mean,
yes.
Of all those, remember all those job centres, or not job centres, what are they called? Places like recruitment, where they had all the jobs. I can't remember what they were called. We used to walk in Alfred Marks and things. You used to walk in off the street and say, I'm looking for a job. I did when I went to school. Oh, here you are. Go and look at this job in insurance company. And I went off and just got it that afternoon.
Yeah.
So all these different jobs. You could either get a temp job or a permanent job. You just used to go and they'd give you a list to look at. So it's like that.
No. Yes, I had the same experience. And I'm not surprised they're angry, but actually directing their anger at us is a little misguided, because it wasn't our fault particularly, and their anger should be aimed at the government, and also at the Labour government, who brought in tuition fees, let us remember, to their shame.
Yeah. Yes, it is a hard time. And then also buying houses, it's difficult for them. Our parents had a tough time, didn't they? They're just after the war, and our children have, and in the middle, we
had it all.
Yeah, that's right. Homeowners, lots of people with more than one home, holiday homes. There we go. We're very fortunate.
we are, and I remember that every day. Because I certainly would have fallen through the gaps these days. Certainly would.
Yeah, different world.
Mm.
Okay, so I've gone off talking about all of that. Let me just say, how old were you then when you were reading Mutual Friend?
Oh, I must have been about 15, I think. 15 or 16, yeah. At Wimbledon County School for Girls. Which was one of the downsides of being a baby boomer, was that you had to go to these awful girls' schools if you were female. And I remember us having skirt check and having to kneel on the floor, and they would measure out,
Kneel on the stage. If your skirt doesn't touch the stage, it's too short. And then you'd come out and you'd roll the band over. Did you do that?
Absolutely. Yes.
The ties, we used to make the ties really fat, didn't we? And did you make the ties about that big?
Yeah. Yes, and that long.
3 inches long. Yes.
Mm.
We were naughty girls. Actually, I wasn't a naughty girl. I wanted to be a naughty girl, but I was very obedient, really.
Oh, I was very naughty.
Which actually brings us on nicely into your third book, doesn't it?
Oh, yes, it does. In a sense, because I think probably it's The Country Girls by Edna O'Brien. And she wrote it in 1960. So I probably read it while I was at senior school. And that's about very naughty girls who are both Irish. And one of them filled with Catholic guilt, the other one not. And it's about the scrapes they get into, and they get expelled, and they go with men, and I was sort of, this can happen. But I also loved Edna O'Brien's sense of humour. So, there was some very important social comment in it, and about, one of the girls was almost sexually abused, certainly treated in a way that was not appropriate by an older man. And that sort of shocked me as well, that could even happen. Mm-hmm. And it certainly influenced the way I write, because I thought I could write about naughty girls and use my own experience.
I got hooked on the Country Girls story after listening to it on Radio 4, and then got after, and that was quite recently, but it's a lovely trilogy, really. And I loved
Girl with Green Eyes and Girls in Their Married Bliss. Yes, yeah. Wonderful woman to have broken the taboos then. And I mean, she was, her books were banned in Ireland because they were considered too shocking and immoral. Good for her.
So what did you misbehave at school at 15, or were you a good girl?
I didn't so much misbehave as I think these days I would have been diagnosed with attention deficit disorder, because I could sit in a lesson for a whole lesson and come out and not know what they'd been talking about. And my mind was just off somewhere else.
Was that imagination?
Maybe. I mean, my school results were fairly dismal at senior school. It wasn't until I went to university and they told me how to take exams, and I sailed through with a first. But then I was in my 40s, so I had no right not to.
Do you think it's because you had a rich inner world? Because you must do for your stories you write.
I beg your pardon.
I think it's because you had a rich inner world that you weren't taking things in because you were going into it.
I would like to say that there could have been absolutely nothing going on in my head. I do have very, very weird dreams, so maybe yes, I do. I do have an odd inner world.
All writers have got a rich inner world because we're very happy to be alone with our thoughts. They all come out on paper, don't they?
Well, yes, and there is a theory that creative people are more likely to have mental health issues because of the way that their synapses connect. And yeah, creative people are more likely than others to have what is it? That Stephen Fry has bipolar. Bipolar. Yeah. So anxiety, depression, bipolar. I mean, these are all typical of creative people. Most of us have a bout of some of it at some point.
And that's, I think, writing, creativity is so important to help with mental health, isn't it? Your mental health and well-being, because it allows you to express things and work things through. And I know writing can be great therapy, as can art.
Oh, it can be very cathartic, but sometimes perhaps it's not a good idea because, to write about what's troubling you, because you end up writing a book that you sort of write yourself into a corner. You think, hey, there's no story here. This is all about me. So, which I have done, and they're all shoved in drawers. And yeah.
Lots of writing, isn't there? I mean, just writing to make it as a cathartic exercise, there's no harm in that. It's a bit like Julia Cameron says with her morning pages, just working things through, just getting things out in a kind of meditative way. I think that's where writing can really be good therapy. If you want to sell a book, you can't, you can't just throw it all out, and it's not.
No. But I mean, life certainly informs what you write, and I mean, most writers will admit that they're huge thieves because they're always pinching other people's experiences and thoughts and lives and relationships and so on. And although you don't write about one person in particular, you pull down elements of all sorts of other people to create a very real character. That's what I think. I mean, and actually, most writers are very well. I don't know, but writers can be very strong on character, and I think my theatre experience helped me with that, because finding character, the whole Stanislavski thing and various other theatre practitioners. Character is everything. To be believed, you must have a completely authentic character. And yeah, my characters take me off in directions I hadn't expected to go.
I think that what comes over in your writing is two things that come from your theatre background. I think one is you're very good at setting a scene. You really create a good scene. And also the characters, you're right. I mean, the characters are very real, which gives great richness to your writing.
Oh, thank you. Well, yeah, I mean, and I have, now Jenny Kay, lovely lady, said, always read what you've written, read it out loud. And actually it helps hugely. So I do that. Not so good at the Scottish accent myself, but yes, I do read it, and I know instantly if it's not truthful.
I think the other thing, as well as taking bits from different characters, different people we know and experiences, putting them together, I think the writers, there's lots of different aspects of ourselves in different characters, not immediate, but a little bit of you in this, you in that, way to explore all the different parts of ourselves, isn't it?
Oh yeah, yes. And I suppose in that way you can work things through, just by injecting a little bit of your own essence into the odd character here and there. But and also Mike Leigh was a huge influence on me. I love his work, and his work was based very solidly on character. And there was another director, Mike Alfreds, who founded Shared Experience, the theatre company. And eventually I got to work with him at the National Theatre as his staff director. And the way he works with actors to create characters and truthfulness is absolutely astonishing. I'm glad I'm not an actor, because it would drive me round the bend.
Was that anything, did you ever want to be an actress?
No. No.
Okay, so shall we go on to your fourth book?
I absolutely adored this book. I read it at university. As part of the first year at university, you had to take 2 other courses, and so I took aesthetics and Italian. And I'm so glad I did, because this book just spoke to me. It's written by Carlo Levi, and it was written about his experiences in World War II. He was a journalist, and he was exiled internally in Italy down to Catania, and in the very south of Italy. And he talked about the life there. And although he quite clearly was a pragmatic and took life as real as it was, and also got into trouble, obviously, by reporting facts, he became fascinated by the people there, and their lives were not so much Catholic as pagan. And he was fascinated by the little practices that they had, and all the women were sort of vying for his attention. I don't know whether he was interested in them. I have a theory about that, but actually the doctor says to him, when you go and take tea, that they will introduce catamenial blood into your tea or your coffee to try and win your heart. Well, catamenial blood is menstrual blood.
Ew.
Yes. And he said, oh. And so, and he says, oh, this woman was a witch, and she used to do this, and somebody else. And I thought, I just loved the laid back way in which he accepted what these people were and what they were like and what their beliefs were. And it's a great lesson in not judging.
I read about the books. I hadn't heard about it before. He was a political prisoner, wasn't he? It was in 1935, and it was around the Ethiopian War. Was it? He was. I had read about it. He'd objected or something.
Yes, yeah, he was. Yes, he was also a journalist. And yes, the Mussolini didn't like what he was writing.
Fascinating.
I'm surprised he survived to write about it, actually, because Mussolini wasn't the most lenient of leaders.
Okay. Really?
He got his comeuppance.
How old were you then? What time of your life was this?
I was in my I was just 40. Just 40 when I read this. But yeah, fell in love with it.
Had you met your husband at this point?
No.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm going to remind me to pick you up on that, because you made a little comment in your notes about how you met your husband. So,
all right. I'd met one husband and got rid of him. And I was sort of in between times.
So the story,
like many of us are.
Was the story to do with your first or second husband?
It's not one of the books I mention, actually, but when with my current husband, who is sitting in the next room, I think we were on our second date, and we talked about Cannery Row by John Steinbeck. And it isn't his greatest work of literature, but it is so poetic and descriptive and colourful. And we just were like this about it. Oh. And eventually we went to Monterey to see Cannery Row and Doc's house, and that's where actually the Monterey Jazz Festival started, because Doc, who is one of the characters, absolutely adored jazz. And so it was based on real life. But yeah, that's not a book I'm talking about today.
That's how you met your husband. Well, you mentioned...
Well, that's not how I met him, but on our second date, yes, that's when we really clicked.
You were just squeezing in an extra book then, really, weren't you, by mention?
Maybe.
So your fifth book?
Yeah.
Was
100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Again, it's like Christ Stopped at Eberly. There is a certain amount of magical realism in it. A lot, actually. It's about a fictional town called Macondo in Colombia. And Gabriel Garcia Marquez was also a journalist and also a political dissident. So maybe I'm attracted to those sort of writers. But I suppose it was about essentially the decay of Colombia as a functioning country, because in the end, the Buendia family virtually dies out, and it's about their story all the way through. But you have a woman talking to her dead husband in the garden, and she sees him and is sitting there, and they discuss things. And a priest levitates. It's an extraordinary book. I would recommend anyone to read it. It's just...
I feel I have to read it, because my very first guest on the pilot for this show, Anita Belli, mentioned this book as well. And funnily enough, Anita has a background in theatre, and she was a filmmaker. So you had some things in common there. This was
well, yes. Yeah.
So between both of you have persuaded me that it just has to be read. It sounds like it's a challenging read when I was reading the reviews about it.
Well, it is. He's not an easy writer, but he is a very literate writer, and obviously it's been translated. But yeah, and other books like Love in the Time of Cholera, extraordinary titles, and yeah, South America was one of my other great interests, and eventually my husband Martin and I went to South America because one of the other things that we talked about was Machu Picchu, and we ended up going there in 2017. So unfortunately, I didn't get to Colombia or Cartagena, but I would love to go there, although it's a very dangerous place.
Yeah, but looking forward to getting back to traveling again.
Well, if we get that dog, it might hamper us a bit.
Oh, you should tell people who are watching, you've just moved so from an apartment to a house
Yeah.
so you can have a dog again in your
Yes.
life.
Yes.
You decided
Yeah.
what breed it will be?
It'll be a rescue dog. It will be a dog that needs a lot of love because, you know, we're both in our late 60s. So you buy a puppy, you never know if you're going to be around to look after it for many years. So yeah, it's a bit morbid talking like that, but yeah, we'll have a rescue dog and love it to bits.
Dog with all that love. So what was going on in your life then? What's happening with your life now?
With my life then, I think I was living in Guildford, possibly, or Crowthorne. I don't know, but I wasn't working in theatre by then. And I was interested to hear about your occupational therapy because one of the things I did to pay the rent to allow me to write was work at a neuro rehabilitation centre.
That's what I specialised in.
Was it really? Well, I have in mind a book based on that, so we must chat offline about it sometime. But I was actually the activities organizer, and we did some extraordinary things, like we took the patients skating in wheelchairs.
Oh, okay, so it wasn't for balance or something.
No. One or two of them we helped around, but yeah, mostly we were, you know, skimming around with wheelchairs. And I became great friends with one occupational therapist in particular. We still stay in touch, and I think it's a wonderful thing that they do. But you know, they would help me with some of the activities. Like we had a Halloween night and we all dressed up, and I think scared the life out of the patient, probably. We made pancakes, and the poor old fellows was dribbling in his mixture, so we couldn't eat it. And sorry.
No, I was going to say, well, I remember when I was a student, and some of the people that I worked with, it sounds awful to say it, but you know, they had such problems, and it wasn't in the neuro, it was in I used to work with learning difficulties, mental health, whatever, and you'd see people dribbling, you'd see hands go down pants and then go back into the thing, and then they'd offer you okay.
I know.
Later.
I know. Well, and also the you know, with damage to the prefrontal lobe, your inhibitions go. And you know, there was one old fellow who we were all very, very fond of, but his daughter would come to visit him, and he would say the most inappropriate things to her, which I won't go into now. But the other thing that I found, and I'm sure you found this, that whatever people's brain damage was, you could always get through to the person inside.
Yes, the people always there, and that's why it's so important to take that time to find that connection. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The person has dementia, whatever they have, the person is still there. They still have a sense of self, and they're still inside there, and it's up to you to unlock and engage and connect. And that's what I've always found rewarding about that work. Because I went on to do management roles and management consultancy and journalism, etc. That never left me. Feeling that empathy and looking for that connection. It's something, I don't know whether it was there before I trained or the training awoke it, but it's always be part of me. It's important.
I have written a play based on the experience, but so far nobody wants to do it, but I keep sending it round.
Right, fascinating. And you're working on another book at the moment as well. Which is, or you haven't got a title yet, have you?
The working title is called The Life of Lala, and that has some magical realism.
Excellent.
At last.
When will it be out, do you know?
Oh, heaven knows at this rate. I mean, I haven't done any writing for nearly 2 months with the house move and everything.
We'll have to look at that one.
Heaven knows. Yeah.
Okay, well, so when you're on this desert island, you're going to have all these books. all 6 of them, as we sneaked another one in. And you'll have all the writing materials that you want and need. So what would be...
Can I have your 2 books as well, please?
Yes, you can have those as well. And what luxury would you take with you?
I would take drawing paper, pencils, canvases, and the whole art kit. I would take. Yeah, I would want anyway, if I'm allowed.
Yeah,
to have it.
That'd be wonderful.
Yeah. I love painting water. I love painting, and I love the sea. So there'll be a lot for me to paint.
I love the light on the water and how it changes it.
Yeah. Oh. Well, Greece is fabulous for that. And absolutely fabulous.
Greece featured in both of your novels, didn't it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The island of Simi
and Leros. Leros is sort of like our second home. It's the most wonderful, wonderful island, and I almost don't like to say so in case other people go there. But it's one of the Dodecanese, and it's not. It is on the tourist track because they have tavernas and so on, but it's you won't find British pubs or anything. Well, you won't find British pubs anywhere in Europe from now. Which is a jolly good thing, I say. But it's a lovely place, and we've made very good friends there, particularly Takis Varnas, who is a nurse there, and helped me hugely over information for Jigsaw Island. And 2 other friends, Anne T and Joe Finn, were fantastic. They're expats living there, and they gave me a huge amount of help. So
there's a good passage right at the end, which is about your research about a refugee's journey, which is
Allah, yes, Allah, wonderful, wonderful young Syrian man who has now got his right to remain in the UK, which is wonderful. His story at the back of the book is true. He took that dreadful journey from Turkey to Greece in a leaky boat, and he's just such a generous, kind, brave young man, and his parents have died, and so he calls me mum now, which I am hugely honoured that he does, and I can't wait for lockdown to finish enough for him to come to our new home and be with us, because we love him.
Oh, that's lovely. Lovely. Well, I could keep talking to you, but I better not, because I think our time is up.
All right. Yes, sorry.
Finish the conversation off air. So sorry, viewers, that you won't get any more of this talk.
We'll talk another time.
Okay. So thank you very much for coming on my desert island with me.
Thank you for inviting me. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed listening to this week's episode of Castaway Books. References for all of the books discussed in this show can be found on my website, which is www.abrakdeborah.wordpress.com. It's the letter K and then my name, Deborah, Deborah. So until next week, goodbye.